Welcome, all fankind. I'm Brandon.
My name is Matt.
And today we're going to talk about two things. Disney's Wish came out last week, and Scott Pilgrim, the animated series, came out recently. So we're both excited to talk about both those things. Fair warning, if you haven't seen these things yet, you might want to go see them, because there may be some spoilers that we're going to talk about.
You want to start with Wish?
Yeah, let's start with Wish.
Cool.
So I had seen it before you once.
Yeah.
And just, I liked it, but what was your first impression?
So initial thoughts on it were the soundtrack. The music was unbelievable. Loved it. I thought the story was very well conceived, very well thought out, well executed. I thought visually it looked very good. The animation, it was funny. The animation from the previews, I wasn't sure how I was feeling about it going into the movie, but then seeing the entire finished product, I thought it worked very well. I really liked how it came out. And overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, kind of going back to the animation thing, I thought that, like, from the trailers, like you, it was interesting. I didn't know if it was along the lines of like a filter, like one of those Apple filters that you had on like the old Macs. But after seeing the movie, it definitely feels like it's not a filter. It feels like a choice. Everything stylistically either feels like a painting or like a design choice. Because even there's like the main character of the little star, the way they did him, he's got like partial outlines for certain things, and then the rest of him is just like glitter coming off of him. But it all feels very painterly.
Yeah, I think very, very simply put, it's visually appealing.
Yeah.
When you see it, it's visually appealing.
I've heard that it's like a different experience in 3D. So I kind of want to go back and check it out in 3D, because what they say is, I don't know if this was like a Disney ad or something, but that it pops out kind of like a pop-up book because of the way it feels with the painting and stuff. So that would be interesting to see it in 3D.
It would.
But yeah, the art was great. The music was great. It had like no business being so good.
No, I think I was telling you earlier, it reminded me very much of Phil Collins' soundtrack from Tarzan, where it felt like, just in the sense that every song hit very hard.
Yeah, it's almost like with Tarzan that I feel like people remember the music more than the movie. I don't know what the situation would be for this one. But the music definitely is like on another level. It's so unique, but it still kind of feels like some of the other recent Disney songs.
Yeah.
They're getting some cool people writing this music, because it's definitely different from who was it? Alan Menken, who does like those older Disney movies.
Yeah.
But it's more not upbeat's not the right word, but
No,
it's like
just
the way that they write the lyrics. It's not your standard like verse. It's all very like heightened and extra.
right.
But yeah, the music was great. I wanted to ask you, when we first got out of the theater, you told me that your favorite track was the Reprise.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if, after sitting with it for a few days, if it's still your favorite track.
I'd probably say it still is. I've always I enjoy when a movie has a reprise, because typically the main song is This Wish, and that version of the song is great as it is. And then when you do when a movie will do the reprise of, said main song, and I think the reprise adds to it in a way. It's a different version of it that's more...
it almost makes it feel more roundabout, more complete.
Yeah. It's a nice, almost bookend to the movie, where this wish was toward the beginning of the movie, and then the reprise of it was at the very end of the movie.
So specifically because you say that, I always bring up that when Frozen came out, I feel like there was talk at the time that it was like one of the first movies that felt like a real musical in a long time.
Yeah.
But Tangled had come out not too long before that, and what people don't realize is the last song in Frozen is the troll song. the Fixer Upper song. There's no like bookend song. Whereas in Tangled, I think it's a little similar. They don't really have a bookend song, but they do keep recalling that When Will My Life Begin? And I think the reprise in like musicals, I love those songs. They feel like everything's connected. It's not just one beat to the next. You bring it all back home. So I agree with you on that. But you said it is still your favorite track?
I think it still is. And I don't dislike, that was the great thing about the soundtrack. I don't dislike any of the songs from the movie.
Yeah.
I like all of them.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
I think when I went into the movie, I was expecting This Wish to be my favorite because like I tried my hardest not to listen to anything in its entirety before the movie.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who, if it's a musical and I know there's going to be music written for the movie, I want to first experience it that way because that's the way it was intended.
Yeah.
And so I was like avoiding it as much as possible. But from the trailers, like the little line of "So I make this wish," I had been singing that in my head for weeks at that point. So I was like expecting that song to be the song. I went in and like left like, oh my God, yes, it was so good. But some of these other tracks were just so good. I loved the song when they're kind of getting ready to enact their plan and they're figuring out how.
Yeah. What was it called?
I know. I've been singing it all weekend and I'm blanking on it right now.
I can't think of the name.
I know how it goes. I don't want to sing the whole thing. What I Know Now. Yeah. There we go. What I Know Now. I loved that track. And then the song, it's almost like the love song to the Wishes in the beginning. I think it's like the second or third song. As One Does, or no, is that
I think that's right.
No. At All Costs. At All Costs.
There you
go. That song, kind of going back to Tarzan, I feel like that was the "You'll Be in My Heart" of this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, the music was so good.
It's great.
And kind of going back to that one track where they're kind of all planning and stuff, it was a good song there's this big cast of characters. And there's not a lot of time you see them. But I feel like that was a good song because they all got to hang out and sing together, which I don't remember there being another song with all of them before.
No, and that's another part of the reason why I think that one and then the reprise of This Wish are my two favorites, is that you get the entire cast singing.
Yeah. And
everyone comes together for those two songs.
There really is like this huge cast, but this was kind of the only thing that I felt like I wanted more from. And it would have just been to know a little bit more about these characters. Because they all have little quirks and little like things about them that are unique, but we don't really know much more from them than that. And it doesn't make the film not work. It just leaves me with some interest. Like I think it would have been cool.
Yeah, they would have been nice if her friends got a little bit more screen time.
Yeah, and even like the Queen. I thought the Queen came in that why do I keep blanking on the name of these songs?
The song?
Yeah, she came in at the end of that one song, and it was like, why isn't she a bigger character? She's like directly involved with Magnifico, and has to go through this arc of, I love him, but he's turning evil. So how do I deal with that?
Yeah,
and then do I turn against him and save the rest of the city?
She kind of like, she's in it at the very beginning. Then she kind of disappears for a little while. Then she comes back in the middle. Then she disappears again. Then she kind of comes back at the end. She kind of comes in and out of throughout the entire movie.
And it never feels like it's a bad thing that she's coming in and out. It makes sense. Every time she appears,
there's a reason.
There's a reason, and it's an important reason.
Yeah.
It's always like the next thing that kind of pushes things forward. But I felt like her character gave a lot of the emotional, kind of like what the audience is feeling. Like the audience feels the same way she does throughout most of the movie. And so she's your closest connection to being like a witness to these events unfolding.
Right.
Asha is obviously the one we're following through the movie. and we agree with her through everything, but I felt like the Queen was kind of that side character that felt like us.
She felt like the more, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but she just felt like more of the one the audience aligns with.
Yeah, it's so weird because she is like kind of so little in the movie, but so much, like she's there, she's present so much.
Right.
But yeah, I think the friends, I think her, it would have been cool to see more of them.
Yeah.
And who knows, if the movie does great, I know they've done series for like Tangled and Big Hero 6. Yeah. Big Hero 6 was another one that had like a lot of characters. And speaking about that, I think Big Hero 6 introduced their characters in a unique way, because when Hero meets the rest of the cast, it's the first time he's meeting them.
Right.
And so they go through this introduction thing where they explain who each character is and kind of a little bit about them. And we don't really get that in this movie. But you do kind of immediately from the start, you get who each character is pretty fast. But yeah, that was another cool thing.
And then I think I feel like we're nitpicking about it. There was not a lot to complain about in regards to the movie.
No, yeah, it was a great movie.
I think the one thing I don't even want to say I took issue with it, but you could tell immediately from the start of the movie who the antagonist was going to be.
Oh yeah.
It was fairly obvious even before things went sideways that you could tell where things were headed.
Yeah, and I agree. That can be maybe a little bit of a letdown, a little disappointment.
I think you've even said where, going back to Frozen, where when they're in by the fireplace and
oh Anna, how could anyone ever love you?
Yeah, no one saw that coming.
Yeah, when that happened in the theater, I remember like seeing it. I think I saw it on Thanksgiving Day. I ditched family.
Priorities.
Saw the movie because I was so excited for that. And when the movie was advertised, it was like, oh, Hans is going to be this fun like romantic interest for Anna, and I think people thought Kristoff was going to be Elsa's love interest.
Yeah.
And I remember like throughout the whole movie, you're thinking like, well, wait, they're both with Anna. Like, how's this going to work? Like, he's taking her back to Hans, but he loves her. She likes him. Like all that. And then you get to the, oh, Anna, who could love you?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what? Like my heart sank in my chest.
I think what he says is, if only there was someone out there who loved you.
That's
you're like,
oh my God, my heart sank. And you could audibly hear the audience's gasps.
Right.
Like, so it would have been cool to have something like that, because Magnifico is, the way they introduce him in the movie, he's fun. He's cool.
Yeah.
You do kind of want to like him, but the issue is with like the way they advertise things, you kind of know he's going to be the villain before you even
before the movie even starts.
Yeah.
You know you're going into it, well, this guy's the villain. This guy's the antagonist.
Yeah, you know he's kind of going to be this cool personality, but he's going to turn.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been cool if they had let that play out a little more in the movie rather than advertisements. But I definitely still feel that journey of, I want to like him.
Yeah.
But I know why I can't now.
Yeah.
So it's still fun, like seeing that shift in him. But yeah, that was something that I think in general is just an advertising thing.
Yeah, I mean, even the movie posters, because obviously, now with Disney, they are not even just Disney. I think other movies do it, they'll put like posters out with several different characters, and there's one with him.
Yeah, and it's all like the green eyes. And,
with the green eyes, the dark magic all around him. You're like, okay, well, he's the villain.
Yeah, I mean, this movie was kind of like a love letter to Disney's animated movies. And so I think maybe there was a bit of it that was intended to be that way. Like, he is kind of that classic, just bad guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately it works. There's no like real issue with it. It's just, it would have been cool to experience it in the theater.
And I also, again, nitpicking, I think a little, I think it could have been a little bit longer. I don't think it left anything out per se.
Yeah, the movie, you're saying the whole movie?
Yeah. I don't think it, like I said, I don't think anything was missing. I don't think it left anything out.
Yeah.
I don't think it left people, you know.
I mean, the only thing I'd say it maybe left out was like more with the friends, but
Right.
But other than that,
But
yeah,
not to the
it
point,
feels complete.
Not to the point where you're like, you know, a massive chunk of something was missing.
Yeah.
Just it could have used a little of this, could have used a little of that.
Yeah, if anything, it just kind of felt like I liked these characters and this world enough that you could have extended it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would have been cool.
Right.
Not like you said, we're missing out.
Right.
Yeah, it's a complete story. It feels great.
And it's a very what kind of strikes me is it's a very simple story.
Yeah, it is.
There's not a whole lot to the story, but it's very well thought out. It works.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to like the really older Disney movies as well, because like even Snow White, there's not much plot that happens. It's like she leaves the castle, and then she pretty much just like hangs out with the dwarves for the majority of the movie.
Right.
And then the story kind of comes back in late at the end.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of felt casual in some of those early movies. And this kind of blurs that line a little bit. It feels a little bit casual, but it feels like, okay, we're keeping things moving. Because I think today's audience is a little more...
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think every movie needs this extremely complicated, drawn out, convoluted plot.
Unless it's done like really well and thought out.
Right. But like it doesn't need that. A movie doesn't need something like that to be successful and well done.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the movie is definitely simple in comparison to some other recent Disney movies, but it's perfect that way.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need any more complications or anything like that.
It doesn't need to be more than what it is. I thought it was very well done.
Kind of speaking about the connections to all the Disney movies, there were like a lot of references throughout. But I don't know which ones you noticed, but there was like, I think there was like a Frozen one where the mushrooms, when they come to life, they say some line that I think is from the first Frozen movie.
Yeah,
and
that
then
sounds
there's
right.
like this idea that some of the wishes that Magnifico is holding on to are of people who want to become what some of these other Disney characters that we're familiar with, like Peter Pan,
right?
Or what was the other? He was like throwing him into his potion, and there was like 3 that he named, and they were all very obviously like Disney characters from other properties.
Wasn't someone in the movie dressed like Peter Pan?
Yeah. So in the movie, you see in The Wish, he's like flying in the ball because that's his dream. And then at the end of the movie, he's like fully dressed.
Yeah, you see him in the green outfit with the green hat and the red feather.
But even in the forest with the bear, like after the big number where they're like, "You're a star," that whole song. At the end of that, he walks away with the deer and he's like, "Come on, Bambi."
The deer's
he got the
Bambi.
deer named Bambi. God, there was a lot. I'm blanking on some of them right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of fun. It's obviously the whole idea of wishing upon a star comes back from like the really old classic Disney movies of Pinocchio and like all that. So it's kind of like nice to see that this movie was trying to blend the different styles, like the new CG look with a kind of painted look for that.
Yeah.
Reference it in some of its material with the whole theme of the movie kind of being wishes, and then the star, wishing upon a star. And then even throwing in those little sprinkles of like direct name dropping and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One cool thing was in the credits. If you sat through the credits, they showed little sparkle drawings,
outlines of
every like Disney. It was like a featured character from every Disney animated movie, starting from the first all the way to the last.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really cool.
It was cool. It's kind of cool when you're sitting there through the credits and you're like, oh, there's Stitch, there's Simba, there's
Yzma.
Yzma, yeah.
That was what you call that. But yeah, I thought that was a nice touch. And then even at the end, you get like a little end credit scene, and it's like all tribute to when you wish upon a star. And it didn't feel like, because I feel like something like that could feel very in your face and forced, But the way this movie handles all of it works. It just
it
feels like a love letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I wanted to ask, because I don't think we ever talked about it, but did you ever, because I think, I don't know, I never turn on my phone even when the movie ends and the credits roll, but I know you did a little bit. Do you remember the song that played during the credits? Because it was a new song. It wasn't like a song in the movie. Oh man, it's such a beautiful song. It's called "A Wish Worth Making," but it just kind of encapsulates that idea of, if you have a dream or you have a wish, don't like sit on it. Like, it's always worth it.
Yeah, it's worth
to make the leap, even if you don't know what's going to happen.
It's worth going for it.
But it's such a beautiful song, and I don't know if it was ever intended to be like a track in the actual movie that a character sang.
It sure fits for the credits, though.
Oh yeah, and it really is such a nice song. But I think that over like the time of seeing it till now, has started to become one of my more favorite just Disney songs in general.
Yeah,
just because it kind of encapsulates that whole idea of what Disney's movies are about.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't know if you'd listen to that one very much, because it's not an actual like cast sung track.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked that, so figured I'd mention it. Anything else about Wish that you can think of?
I think that was it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Go see it.
Yeah,
I definitely recommend it.
We recommend it. Yeah.
All right, so the other big thing that you and I kind of love to death is Scott Pilgrim. And recently, after who knows how many years, 10 something like that, from the movie at least.
Yeah.
But we finally get more content, and what better way than to do it as an animated series?
Yeah.
Like, I was excited. I didn't watch any trailers or anything. And be warned, if you didn't take the spoiler warning before, take it now, because we're definitely going to be talking about things. But you start the first episode, and it feels like, okay, cool, this is kind of what I expected it to be. It's basically a translation of the movie and the comics to like animated form.
Yeah.
Then you get, what?
Like 90% of the first episode is basically the first however long of 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, almost like in the same dialogue and everything.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of the episode where Matthew Patel shows up, and in one punch, Scott dies. And you're like, what?
And the funniest part about that was, like, when you think back to the movie, that was like the least like exciting battle between Scott and one of her exes in the movie. You almost forget he's even in there. I feel like all the other ones.
For me, I love Matthew Patel's fight. I think it's one of the fun ones, just because he sings and he has like the dancers, and it's all like almost like a taste of Bollywood in there.
Yeah.
But I do know what you mean. It's the first one, so it's over and done with.
Right.
And then now you've got a bunch of others.
Yeah. But then, he shows up as he does in the movie, and except in the animated series, he kills him with one punch.
And I remember I was just like, so
what's the rest of the show?
Is this like a fever dream or something? And I didn't know if there was going to be like a quick like joke about it, and then it like
he comes back in some way or whatever.
But episode 2, you get a funeral. And you're like, okay, so he's, geez, what?
Scott Pilgrim's dead. All right.
Yeah, Scott, no more. But immediately it clicked in my head. Like, of course, like, why not tell a brand new story? Like, it makes so much sense, and it gives you reason to watch this. Yeah. But immediately I was like, I have to finish this whole series now. Like,
I did the same thing. When I sat down to watch it last week, I had planned to watch, I think, 1 or 2 episodes, because it was kind of on the late side. And I believe I had plans that night. After I watched the first 2 episodes, I was like,
no plans.
I was like, I'm going to be sitting with this friend I was supposed to go out with, thinking about this show. Yeah. I was like, I have to finish the show before I go. And I watched the whole show.
Yeah.
I couldn't not.
It's such a cool thing to see the world of Scott Pilgrim expand.
Yeah.
And get more to this, like,
different perspectives from the different characters.
Well, that was it. Yeah. So basically, all these characters that you only got for a few minutes on screen in the movie, now you get a whole series with. You kind of lose Scott. So there was a point where I was like, should this be called Scott Pilgrim, or should it be called like Ramona Flowers and the X's or something?
Yeah, it is like, true, because like in the movie, you know, you get it's very focused on Scott and Ramona, and you get the little itty bitty the battles with the X's, and then, you know, they're out. This is kind of the opposite, where Scott's out of the picture through most of the series. Ramona's obviously involved because she's
well, that's what was so cool. It was like Ramona was always one of my favorite characters. And so now we actually get to know more about her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like, I read the comics and everything, but it's been a long time. But I know the comics take place over a longer period of time than the movie. The movie takes place like over a week. Yeah. Whereas the comics take place over, I think it's months or years. So there are characters that get a lot more fleshed out.
Yeah.
But it was cool in this show to see, like, Ramona confronting her exes, because now instead of Scott being the one confronting them, she was trying to solve like what happened to Scott, and she had to confront them personally.
And it's in a different way than Scott does in the movie.
Yeah, it's like how she can grapple with like her own emotions and the way that she broke things off with them.
And what had happened with them in the past.
Yeah, and kind of like fixing the emotional damage that was caused by all the breakups.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that they didn't just like make these evil exes exactly the way that you remember them. They change them so much. Like Lucas Lee goes from being like the movie...
He's the Hollywood star.
The Hollywood star, to now losing his job and eventually becoming like a barista and like living with Gideon, who's now, what was it, Goose or something?
Yeah, shoot, what's his name?
Gabe Goose or something?
Shoot.
I know, it's been like a week or so.
Gordon Goose.
Gordon Goose. Gordon Goose moves in with Julie and like becomes like the loser boyfriend who just lives on the couch.
He's like crashing on the
Lucas comes and joins him.
Yeah.
It's like they changed the character. Even Matthew Patel becomes like the CEO of Gideon's company.
He defeats Gideon at the beginning of the series and becomes the CEO of everything Gideon owns.
Yeah, and it's just so cool to see them different.
Yeah.
And it was a great, like, they're bringing back the whole cast from the movie. It gives them so much opportunity to play with those actors too now.
Yeah.
Because they're all great actors, and in the movie you just get them for a minute. So if it was like the way I thought the show was going to go, you'd only get like each character for like one episode. But now you get every character almost through the whole series, because the whole series is about all of them.
How about the fact that what's the, I'm blanking on the vegan dude's name? Crap.
Why is it like when you need the name you blank on it, but then when you don't, you know everything by
Yeah.
Shoot. Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
well, yeah,
we'll think of it at some point, I'm sure. Anyway, in the movie, you know, he gets defeated by Scott, and he loses his loses his vegan powers, and he becomes a loser. And
yeah, it was so unique what they did in the show. I loved it. He becomes like
infatuated with
Scott's roommate, Wallace Wells. And like Envy is like, what are you doing? Like, he's cheating on Envy with Wallace in secret.
Yeah, they're basically like, having an affair
like
on this.
Love sick. And Wallace is like kicking him to the curb like, this is just a fling, man.
He's like obsessed with
like
him.
a puppy dog. Yeah. Even with Roxy, like, I love that. I think that was the first ex that Ramona confronted in the show.
Yeah.
But the way they treated it, it was a little more emotional. Like they didn't leave on the best of terms, and so it was Ramona kind of realizing what she did and I don't remember if it was exactly like an apology, but it was like, how can we make up for what I did to you?
Yeah. And all you get in the movie from that is she's like furious at her for ending it. And if I'm not mistaken, that's it.
Yeah. And then Scott defeats her.
You get nothing else.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was just a lot. I mean, with all the characters, there was just a lot more emotion with them. They weren't just angry or...
No, there was a lot more substance to the stories of each of them. What happened with Ramona, why they, why things had happened the way that they had.
Yeah, and it gave that backstory of, like you said, why the relationships went sour.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about Roxy's was that it's still Scott Pilgrim, so it's not just, let's sit here and talk it out. It was like in a video store that they kind of first start getting into a fight, but because of the way they get into the fight, they're now in the movies from the store, like as if they're actors in it. And so they're going through their like history with each other while falling through different movies.
Right.
And it's like that whole kind of Scott Pilgrim twist on things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole show was just so unique to not just copy what
it was very, very clever. The entire different story with the different perspectives, how they did the show.
Yeah. I mean, even the way that they ended it, I think they've said there weren't any official plans to do another season.
Yeah.
But with the way they ended it, it's kind of ambiguous. So I'd love to see them bring it back because I think there's way more to see with these characters, especially in this new version.
You know what's funny? This version of everyone leaves more possibilities than the movie did.
Yeah, because like no one's
in the movie
gone now.
Yeah, in the movie everyone's dead. All of the evil exes are killed.
Yeah, it's I don't know how that officially works if they die or what, but yeah, they're gone.
Right.
And it's kind of done with. Scott won. No one's coming after him anymore.
He's with Ramona.
But in this one, it's like no one ever had to really fight. It was just everyone made up, sort of, in a way. And Scott's whole story, too. I mean, the way they did it, it's totally connected to the original story.
Right.
The original story happened. We're not erasing the history.
That was the other thing that I was glad that I was glad that they did. They didn't do the new story. How do I say this? In like the what happens in the movie exists. It happened.
Yeah, because basically the movie played out, and what happened after the movie we don't see, but eventually we find out that Scott has been living with Ramona, and I think they got married and all that.
Yeah.
And now they got into some argument or something where they were kind of split up in the future.
Yeah.
And Scott was so heartbroken that he used, like, I forgot what it was. It wasn't the vegan powers. It was like the Kadianaga twins.
He used the Kadianaga twins.
To help him reach back in time and pull Scott
to try and convince him to never date Ramona.
Yeah, and so at the same time, I forgot who it was that threw the script of... Oh, it was Ramona. Ramona tries to keep the history of the world the same by throwing back a script that's based on basically what the movie is.
The Ramona from the future.
Yeah, the Ramona from the future. And so throughout the whole series, there's this movie or play going on about the events of how things played out in the movie and the comics.
Right.
While in this reality, Scott perished in the first battle. And so it's like you're not ignoring what came before. You're just kind of, it's a new timeline, almost like a multiverse kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny that they went that way a little bit, that it's not a different universe per se, but it's just a different version of the events, what happened.
And like I said, they left it kind of ambiguous with Gideon and Julie staring at all the screens being like, I forgot what it was, but it was like, we're ready for this or something.
Yeah.
So they're definitely up to something.
But speaking of Julie, one of the funny things from the movie that I think we both really love is the joke that when Julie cusses, it blurs it out and makes the staticky sound.
Yeah.
And they
in the movie it was like a 2-second thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the show,
I think she curses twice when they do that in the movie.
Yeah, I think it's
like 2 or 3
twice.
times maybe. And then in the show, they took it and ran with it. Where
yeah,
like
every time you see her, she pretty much
she curses and
swears.
yeah, she swears. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's like all the little things you loved from the movie. They definitely brought back. They didn't like make you feel like you were missing anything.
No, and the other simple thing that I really thought was cool too was how in every episode, but I believe 2, they begin with Ramona dyeing her hair a different color. And I just thought I thought it was very simple, but I thought it was very cool.
Yeah, like 2 episodes I think they did.
Yeah.
But every episode after the title sequence, it started with Ramona changing her hair, which I love because now you get so many more color options for her dyeing her hair.
There's like 6 different versions of her hair throughout the show.
But I thought that was really fun. I think they probably, I don't know what it would have been for process wise of drawing that, but I think it was probably just like the same outlines and then they just put different colors in.
Yeah. And
but it was such a small thing.
Yeah.
But it left such a big impact. I loved it.
The other thing I thought was very cool too, I don't know if you noticed, was so obviously they brought back the entire cast. So in the show, you can tell you can tell it's all the same actors, but it's not just the actors aren't speaking the way they're
not speaking exactly the way that they would normally on camera.
Right.
It's a little enhanced for the sake of animation.
Right. So like you can tell it's the same cast that you really enjoy from the movie. They all sound a little bit different for the show.
Yeah, and it's also kind of because the characters also have changed. It's not It's not just the exact same version of the character from the screen. It's supposed to be the starting point, but it changes. All these characters change so drastically that it makes sense that the voices are a little more animated.
Right.
But yeah, I liked that. At first, I'm not going to lie, when the first episode was playing, and they're going through all the beats of what's in the movie, like almost word for word, there was something about it that it was nostalgic and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel the same as the movie. Like it felt, dare I say, a little less interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was just due to the way that when you do a movie, the soundtrack is so very specifically tailored to every little beat in time. And this did all those same beats from the movie, but very quietly. There wasn't very much music throughout that. So I was kind of thinking, I like this and I would still enjoy it if it was the whole show. But it was almost like an audible cue that I knew something was going to grow.
Yeah.
Because I knew what Scott Pilgrim was. It's all this big, loud music and like big thematic things going on. And so when it's made that switch, it just brought everything to life. Everything felt bigger. Then the voices kind of changed. The music picks up. All these characters going through crazy things. And they definitely made the right choice in not doing a direct adaptation.
Yeah.
But I loved seeing how they played around with all the characters.
Yeah, it was just incredibly clever the idea behind it, like what they decided to do, the way they executed it, and how it all came out.
You know, one thing that I was thinking about is because we love the cast so much, you'd think that if they were to replace any of the actors with someone else, that it would be kind of a maybe not so good thing to do, because everyone's like, well, why didn't you just get him?
Right.
And I wasn't sure if I was going to like this when I started to figure out what was going on. But when you meet older Scott from the future, it is a different actor. But they got the perfect actor. I think it was Will Forte, but his voice is like the perfect embodiment of Scott.
Was it?
I think he could have been like young Scott too, but I think it worked that it was older Scott.
Was it a third actor for older Scott as well?
No, so it was the
same guy.
It was Will Forte again.
Yeah.
But it's just that kind of, he has that kind of whiny sounding voice that
Right.
felt so appropriate for that.
He sounds like
version
the
of
older
Scott.
version of Scott.
Well, I didn't necessarily think he sounded like he was older, but he just sounded like a version of Scott that has been through all this stuff in his life and
Right.
has just become more of a whiner.
Right.
Like he just whines about things more.
Yeah.
And it worked so well. And I don't think they could have done that with any other character
No.
or any other actor. Like that, do that while bringing back the cast. Because that was the only character I think they did it with, but it worked.
Right.
It definitely was not expected,
Nope.
but it was I think it was the perfect casting choice.
Yeah, I
and
thought
to
so
see
too.
like a little bit of what happened to Scott after,
Yeah.
like it was kind of cool. It's obviously it didn't turn out great for him, but it wasn't, because of the way they chose to do the story. It didn't feel like Scott's life ended up horribly, because with the time travel thing, there was still hope.
Yeah.
There was a chance to fix it. And so really everything they did was really well thought out, really well done.
Yeah.
It was just a really great show.
Again, highly recommend. Obviously, if you love Scott Pilgrim the way we do, I'm sure you've already watched it or are planning to.
Yeah.
But we highly recommend it.
Yeah, movies, comics, game, anything. If you like any of those, you'll probably like the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that
I think so.
we were thinking. Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you like hearing about this kind of stuff, want to hear more, follow, subscribe, comment, let us know if there's anything that you love that you want to hear us talk about. For all fankind, thank you.
Thank you.